Hello everyone. Apologies for the gap between this and the last video. Work has been mental. I have not found the time to do this, but, well, I found the time to do this one, so we may as well get into it, and I have to apologise, it is not a particularly happy subject. This young trans girl, known as Brianna Ghey, was stabbed on Saturday in a park in Warrington, and it happened to be around a time I was travelling around Warrington. And so when me and my girlfriend saw quite a few police cars going about, we have concluded that more than likely they were heading to this scene. And it is, of course, an absolute tragedy. And when it comes to deaths like this, the last thing that I think any dignified and self-respecting person should be doing is doing something known as ambulance chasing, where they will use what is quite frankly a fresh and still warm corpse and use it to push their political agenda. This video, I am not going to push any of my political agenda. I am going to tell people to stop using this particular incident as a political football until we know the full facts. Because news of this came out on Monday the 13th of February, and the Daily Mail had to say the heartbroken family of a transgender girl, Brianna Ghey, who was stabbed to death in Warrington Park, said today the tragedy had left a massive hole in their lives. A tribute from her grieving relatives said she had been a strong and fearless and one of a kind. Officers have arrested a local boy and girl, both 15, on suspicion of murder. They are currently in custody, assisting police with their investigation. Police say they do not believe it is a hate crime or related to the fact Brianna was transgender. And that was pretty much it. That was all the facts we had yesterday, all the confirmed facts, I should say. Brianna was tragically stabbed to death in Warrington Park. There is a boy and a girl, both of 15, who were arrested on suspicion of murder. Police at the moment do not believe it was a hate crime, but that doesn't mean it is definitely not a hate crime, so they are investigating all avenues. Having said that, the police were reporting that it was a targeted attack. It just wasn't necessarily based on her being a trans girl. It could have been targeted for a number of other reasons. So given at the moment the general public doesn't have a whole array of information to go off with this particular incident, that didn't stop absolute fools from making even bigger fools of themselves and making vapid assumptions on why the poor trans girl was killed. India Willoughby decided to tweet, "Over the next 24 hours you're going to see a grotesque parade of media pundits, the likes of Piers Morgan, Dan Wootton, Julia Hartley-Brewer, umpteen colonists, all saying how awful Brianna's murder is and that trans people suddenly deserve to be safe." As mentioned at the start of the video, Brianna's death is being used as nothing more than a political football for these political activists, and it is disgusting. India is implying here that people such as Piers Morgan, Dan Wootton, and possibly even myself wish the deaths of trans people, when the reality is that this issue is incredibly complex. There's no simple answers here. If there were, we would have found them already. And trans radical activists are going too far in one direction, so they are all reacting in the other direction of saying, well, if you've got a penis, you're not a woman. If you take from that, well, that means you want me dead, then I am afraid you have something wrong in your brain, because you clearly don't have a decent understanding of the English language. And unfortunately, she wasn't the only one. Susie Green, the co-founder of Mermaid, the charity that is under multiple investigations for poorly handling the care of trans kids, especially with their influence over the Tavistock Centre, decided to tweet, "16 years old, I feel sick. It's the inevitable result of transphobia rampant across mainstream and social media. For Brianna Ghey, for her family, all the love. And those whose blood is on your hands, I know it's pointless as you won't take responsibility, but fucking own it." Again, being used as a political football to attack her political enemies. And again, I am quite comfortably in the position of being her political enemy. Plenty of my videos have pointed out how her ideological ends are inevitably going to cause immense harm to a lot of children. But I have no doubt in my mind that she would point at my videos and say, this had a part to play in Brianna's death. Well, I can assure you, none of my videos had any effect on the absolute scumbags who decided to take a knife and use it against Brianna Ghey. At no point in my life have I blamed any particular trans person or shown hatred to any particular trans person because of just the simple fact that they are trans. All my problems with trans people are only against the type of trans people who are radical activists. And the funny thing is that because I'm against particular people who have particular political positions, that means it doesn't matter who or what they are. It only matters what their political position is. And you, Susie, are involved with those trans people I am political enemies with. You can be attack helicopters for all I care. You are all put in the same boat, and as with every other boat out there as to how I categorise people, I wish no harm upon any of them. Anyway, those are just two examples of people using Brianna's tragic death as a weapon to beat over the heads of their political enemies, and I just think that's completely undignified and even sick, possibly even borderlining evil. Yet, as is common with most leftists, it's win by any means necessary, and if that means using the tragedy of the death of a young trans girl, then so be it. I, however, will not stoop to your level. However, at the very least, I can say with these two examples, it's a more direct attack on their political enemies, saying, I'm blaming you for this. That's at least an emotive response I can understand. But somehow there are worse ones. One of the worst ones is about her death certificate, which I just find a bit morbid to talk about. Unfortunately, I've been put in this position. So Owen Jones is an example of this. We don't know yet the circumstances surrounding young trans girls Brianna Ghey's murder, which is good. That's a good start. That is what I'm telling everyone else to say. We don't know if it's a hate crime yet. However, Owen Jones has to make one of his political pet peeves known. We do know that without the gender recognition laws countries from Ireland to Argentina have, her death certificate will class her as a boy. Yes, a young trans girl has been stabbed, and Owen Jones's first reaction online after saying, "Isn't this all sad?" is to say, "But the death certificate is the real tragedy." And I don't even know what I can comment on this. But before I do, I think there's an even worse tweet out there, and I think it's worse because it's not from a complete and utter leftist, it's from someone who can have good takes occasionally. Yeah, I think you probably guessed it was Tom Harwood. So he said, "It is so unspeakably cruel that the state will list Brianna Ghey as a boy on her death certificates." Do you know what I think is unspeakably cruel, Tom? I think it's not really choosing your moment to talk about this. I think if I knew or was related to Brianna Ghey, I would find this incredibly insulting that you're saying, man, do you know what the cruelest part of this is? It's the death certificate. This reminds me of the old Norm Macdonald joke where he said he was talking to someone about the Bill Cosby rapes, and someone said, do you know what the worst part of that is? It's the hypocrisy. That wasn't the worst part. And it's the same here. It's like, oh, it's unspeakably cruel about the death certificate. It's like that. That's not the unspeakably cruel bit. A gender recognition certificate is not a passport into spaces, you don't need one for that. What it allows for is basic dignity on documents like marriage or death certificates. Yes, well, as I say, there are better times to make these points, and I'm not going to react by saying what my particular opinion is. As I say, I don't want to make this into a political point-scoring exercise. I just want to point out that a young person has been brutally murdered, and all people can talk about, it seems, from the trans radical activist side are, oh, this is to blame with J.K. Rowling, Piers Morgan, or the other transphobes, and then you've got other people who have realised that it's not necessarily a hate crime saying, oh, yeah, but why is no one thinking about the death certificate? When the reason for all this is because someone's been murdered, we don't know all the details at the moment. Can we at least let her rest in peace before we get onto these subjects? Because this isn't particularly dignifying. Anyway, this was all done before we got further details of the whole Brianna Ghey situation. Really, we don't know too much more about the two 15-year-olds who have been arrested on suspicion of the murder of Brianna Ghey. But the information that has come out is making claims that Brianna was a victim of bullying, which in the previous article there was actually a direct quote from someone who knew Brianna that there was no mention of her being bullied. But here in this Daily Mail article it says, murder victim Brianna Ghey was tormented by bullies at school because she was trans, it has been claimed. The 16-year-old who was stabbed to death in a targeted attack in Warrington Park over the weekend had allegedly been bullied by a gang at Birchwood Community High School. Brianna's father allegedly complained to the school and she confessed to a friend that she was devastated by the abuse, Mail Online can reveal. It is thought that she was attacked by a gang of school children, pulled downstairs by a backpack in a move called seatbelting, and had bottles thrown at her. I'm thinking back to my school, that's actually probably pretty tame compared to the bullying that I can remember. Either way, to be clear, I am not excusing anyone's bullying behaviour. I'm simply saying this is what kids do, and obviously some kids deal with it better than others. Damien Harry, whose 15-year-old daughter was in Brianna's class and was friends with her, told Mail Online the teenager had been bullied in the past. She said she was devastated by the constant abuse and even talked of ending it all, the father of two said. It was down to her being trans. It is disgusting what happened. Her dad has apparently said he raised safeguarding at the school 1,000 times, but little was done. The abuse was constant, all because she was different. Let's be frank, she was bullied because of her sexuality. Of course, it is a hate crime. 50-year-old added that although there were a few transgender pupils at the school, the teenager was still targeted. There were a few transgender pupils at the school, maybe a handful, he said. They bullied Brianna because she was trans. All sorts of things were done to her. This is awful sentencing. My daughter is distraught at Brianna's death. She is so upset she has been throwing up with the trauma of it. Now, Damien seems incredibly confident that Brianna was indeed bullied because she was trans, and therefore it must be that she was killed because she is trans. The thing is that I think Damien is a bit of a not fully trustworthy source when it comes to this particular incident, because Damien has been posting a particular video and picture on Twitter that kind of obfuscate and make him seem like he will not give out the truth when asked for it. For instance, he says in this tweet, Birchwood High School, Warrington Council, Cheshire Police knew Brianna was being relentlessly bullied, and why? They failed to safeguard her. My daughter was in the same cesspit school as Brianna. This is what's happened to her. Some still in their school uniforms. Now, I'm not going to show you the video because YouTube will not allow me to monetize this particular video, but the link's in the description if you really want to watch it. But it is literally just two girls in a bit of a scrap having a bit of a school fight. Again, thinking back to my days at school, it's a bit rough, but nothing really that out of the ordinary from what I can remember when fights came about. And you've obviously got schoolboys in the video calling the girls names because when you're watching a fight, that's what boys do. And here he has a reply from Cheshire Police. And Damien is constantly saying, you know, nothing's done by the police or the school about any of the bullying going on, and quite clearly the police have done something. They have sent a police constable into the school to talk about the incident, and he's even trying to get clarification on what the school did. Now, I don't know what the school did, but I do find it hard to believe that the school would do absolutely nothing after a copper came in. But clearly the police are doing more than nothing, as Damien claims. In fact, his distortion of what goes on with the police and the school are relatively blatant. In this tweet he says, Cheshire Police, Warrington Council, Culcheth and Birchwood High School deny there are endemic bullying issues. This Birchwood High student pleaded guilty to common assault and assault by beating on my daughter from Birchwood High, dangerous cesspit. And these images are images from the court, the first one saying that the student he is going on about, who did plead guilty to common assault charges, has been punished to the extent of the law that seems reasonable. And then the other two are emails from the police and the witness care services, basically saying that to give evidence they just need to do something similar to a Skype call from different rooms in the courthouse. In other words, the video that he showed of the fight, and apparently there must have been more context to it, clearly it was dealt with seriously by the police. So clearly bullying is taken seriously by the police at the very least, and any school is going to want to have on their record no visits, or at least as little visits as possible from the police, and I just do not believe that the school didn't do anything about it. So his claims that nothing is being done about bullying just seem to be completely untrue, given that the court is punishing a student for common assault. And yet he is the person that the Daily Mail went to try and get a testimony from about whether Brianna was being bullied. And, well, in this case, yes, there is actually a case of someone being bullied, and there's something being done about it, but along the whole way of describing the situation, Damien isn't giving the truth in its most concise and fair form. He is distorting it to some degree. So his testimony in the Daily Mail, I'm afraid I have to take as a bit distorted. Am I saying Brianna wasn't bullied for being trans? No. She very well may have been, and I'm perfectly happy to believe that there was some bullying going on against her. Was it because she is trans? I don't know. Again, that is a possibility. Am I going to take Damien's word for it? Absolutely not. But anyway, as far as I'm aware, that's all the information we really have on the Brianna Ghey case at the moment. It is an incredibly sad case, and we're just going to have to wait for Cheshire Police to conduct their investigation and find out what happened. If it turns out it was a hate crime, and she was murdered for being trans, that's awful. Still don't like hate crime laws, still don't think the kid should be punished even more just because they attack someone because they're trans. I think the murder is a good enough reason to sentence them. But for the moment, we do not know why she was attacked. We just know she was targeted. There is rumours that she was bullied at school for being trans. Does that necessarily mean that this murder was because she was trans? No. This is why the police are investigating these things, and they should absolutely investigate these rumours and then find out if they're true or not, as it might aid them into knowing why the kids murdered Brianna. And in fact, the kids might have already said why they murdered Brianna. It's just not come out yet. Anyway, while the idiots talk politics about this tragedy, I think what other people in the UK are doing is perfectly fine, and I encourage this type of reaction. Brianna Ghey candlelit vigils planned across UK for Schoolgirl. So there's going to be candlelight vigils all over the UK in different cities within schools in memory and respect for Brianna Ghey. Absolutely fine. The article does mention that it is specifically the transgender community that are organising these vigils, and while thinking back when I was at school, there were definitely stories of kids being murdered for numerous reasons. I can't think of a time that a candlelit vigil was ever the reaction, but sometimes there were times we were in assembly and we bowed our heads in remembrance of certain people, not necessarily ones we knew. I'm talking about murders from all over the country. So as I say, I've got absolutely nothing against this, and I wish this was just how everyone who really cares about this particular story would react, but no. We need to have people saying think about the death certificate. We need to have attacks against people who are against the trans radical activists, because everything has to be political to these people, even at times where it's wildly inappropriate, and I refuse to be one of those types of people. Anyway, that's everything I had for you today. As usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.